Are we live yet? I gotta pick my nose.
We should be live. Yeah. Last time we were having like all sorts of technical difficulties.
Yeah, that was frustrating.
Yeah, it was frustrating. It was because somebody went into the hardware and was changing the IP address to try to get it to work in conjunction with the other computer, and yeah, didn't work. Didn't work.
No.
It's a work in progress, man.
It is. It is.
So this week we have coming up, you and I both, Comic-Con.
Yeah, Comic-Con this week, guys.
New York City.
Yeah, New York City Comic-Con. For those of you who don't know what that is, why don't you know what that is? It's just a massive event that's held at a convention center, Javits Convention Center, featuring comics, games, products, comic book artists,
anime girls,
cosplay girls. Is that what you mean? Cosplay, anime, cosplay girls, boys, and those with no gender. Jack.
I think non-binary is the preferred.
Is it non-binary?
Non-binary, yeah.
I heard a term recently, non-binary trans, which makes absolutely no sense to me, and not kind of like.
I just don't know what that means.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And not like jumping on anybody's identity, because I don't know, like it's so subjective. But trans means from to, like transatlantic. You're crossing the Atlantic, right? Or trans, like a trans is like, so a trans woman is a male to female. A trans across. Non-binary trans, if they're non-binary, what are they crossing?
I don't know, man. There's a whole series of things that like I just like. There are terms and like it's my own ignorance, I guess. Like genderqueer, like I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
Yeah, I just don't know. I'm like, hey man, like you do you. It doesn't bother me any, but I don't know what all these words mean.
I don't either.
Because like we're old white guys, and you know we're not hip with the kids. We don't know this stuff.
No. I mean, more power to whomever. I mean, that's the great thing about America, right? Everybody's free to do whatever.
This isn't Red China, Dave. It's not Red China.
True. Well, but hold on. Red China. Don't you know? Didn't you read the New York Times article? I mean, Mao is
which one?
Mao is he's one of the most famous revolutionaries. He has a distinguished history.
There's I mean, was that a recent article they published?
That was like a month ago.
There is a whole slew of weird, I mean, frankly, just surreal and bizarre pro-communist articles in the New York Times that have always mystified me. Like there was one of my favorites that they ever ran was about how women in East Germany had more orgasms than women in West Germany. I'm not making this up. You can go and find it for yourself. This was actually an article that they ran. And, you know, people who are real Marxists, and they're out there, they will be the first to tell you that the USSR is an example of failed communism. It didn't work. That's not the icon, that's not the role model that Marxists look to anymore. They're not like, we want to replicate the Soviet Union.
Right.
Like, no one really thinks that. Even Marxists don't think that. But these people who are like champagne socialists on the Upper East Side have this very bizarre affinity for, you know, quote unquote, the revolution that's going to, you know, crash the class system. And that's why you see all these articles they publish like, oh no, the class system is coming back to Cuba. And it's just so tone deaf. It's like such an affluent white thing to say.
Right.
Like these people suffered under communism for decades.
Right.
And now they're starting to make a little bit more money.
Right.
You know, the restaurants are opening up, you know, so some commerce is starting to happen, thank God. But that there's these Americans who are like loathing and disdaining this opening up of Cuba because of the communism was so great there.
Right.
You know, that it was so quaint that they drove these old cars.
Right. And they're posting their rants.
Oh my God!
Using an iPhone that was built with child labor, on Facebook that was dealt. It's just it.
You know what?
The irony just is so, anyway.
You're absolutely right. But I mean, what I was going to say there is that what's fascinating to me about that is that capitalism emerged as the predominant socioeconomic system after 1989, 1990. The victory capitalism had was so strong that people who call themselves communists or socialists today are not even aware of what you're saying. Like that, it's institutionalized. It's so strong,
right,
that they're oblivious to the fact that they're on their iPhone and their MacBook,
right,
and they're live streaming on the YouTubes and the Twitches,
right,
and they're completely oblivious to that. I saw one journalist who was pretty hardcore socialist, and he was talking about how much better South Korea is than us, but he specializes in South Korea. And he's talking about, the free Wi-Fi in the airport, it's this ultra-modern airport and all this stuff. And I mean, the guy has lived in South Korea a long time, so I was surprised to hear him say this, like, socialist South Korea is so much better than America, they have it so much better. If you know anything about the history of South Korea, it was built on capitalism, and not the nice guy capitalism we have in America, like authoritarian capitalism. Like you're not on board with the program, police pulling you out in the streets and like beating you back in the '60s and stuff. I mean, it was brutal, brutal authoritarian capitalism that built, what they call it the Tiger of Asia for a reason. It's not like that anymore. They're more,
I like the idea of authoritarian capitalism. You will make money. Well, you don't make money.
That's kind of what China is.
Yeah.
China is the.
And I'm just kidding. I don't like the idea of authoritarian capitalism. It's just the term, like, presents these images like, start a business now.
Yeah, it is just to me completely bizarre. But I mean, you have to take that sort of that sort of nostalgia. You have to take it for what it is. That they're these affluent, wealthy white people in Manhattan, who have some sort of bizarre affinity for East Germany. I mean, they built a wall to keep people in. Keep them in. It wasn't cool.
It just, well, that's sort of like, I don't know if it's still a thing, but I remember, 10, 20 years ago how these people were really always propping up Che Guevara, and it's like, the guy had some really like
nasty stuff,
and very homophobic, very like he was not a good person in any way. Like, how can you prop this guy up to be some beacon of?
I mean, Guevara, I have a certain grudging respect for in the sense that he was an authentic revolutionary. So was Castro in so many ways. Guevara was, he went into the jungles of Angola and like lived with the troops. Like he was all about being on the front lines.
Sure.
He was a real deal in that regard, but he also served a backwards, corrupt ideology.
Right.
I'm sure he didn't see it that way. I mean, I guess I can see why you could be a communist in 1918, but in 2018, it mystifies me.
Right.
100 years later, I don't get it.
Right. Well, because
other than that sort of fantasy make-believe nostalgia for the past.
Well, and the thing is that, I mean, if you were a true communist, like now, like, hey, we should post this on Facebook. No, we don't use Facebook. Like, nobody would know that they were communists because they'd have no way to get their message out. You know what I mean? Or like,
this is an interesting a point as well. So amongst anarchists, throughout history, there's been this rejection of the political establishment. So the anarchists would say, we can take our system for example. We have the two-party system. We have a three branches of government.
Sure.
We have our way of passing legislation. The anarchists would say we're not participating in that. That's a corrupt system.
Right.
They're hardcore about it.
Right.
No, we're not going to involve ourselves in that system. And this book I read by Murray Bookchin, who's an anarchist philosopher, really pointed out that's the flaw of anarchy, and that's where they're mistaken, is that you should use the political structure to advance your agenda. You use it to get done what you need to get done. If you reject it, you become, by default, marginalized. You're on the outside, and you never accomplish anything. Right.
Well, I mean, but then would somebody, like an anti-technologist or something like that,
would Ted Kaczynski?
Would they then be justified in using, social media and things like that to to further their message, because then it almost becomes a mockery of itself, right?
The medium is the message.
Right. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that I have no strong political views, because I don't have to wrestle with these deeper ideological ideas. I don't have to worry about am I being hypocritical or unintentionally ironic or anything else like that, because I just don't know.
I mean, I think it's okay to be pragmatic about it. I'm not a huge fan of social media, but I use it.
Right. But you're also not all social media should be banned.
No.
And I'm saying this on social media. Because I gotta get my message out.
Yeah, like I said, it's like it's like such a strong archetype that we can't even imagine not using it or not having it, and everyone's addicted to it,
Yeah.
Maybe that's the thing that crosses ideologies. We're all addicted to these bullshit platforms.
I actually, I don't go on them enough. I broke away from them a few years ago, and now it's like pulling teeth for me to get on Facebook and spend any amount of time on there.
Facebook is really painful because I mean it's mostly an older generation on there, and some of my people I admire the most are of that generation. They're the Vietnam veterans, but their information literacy is so bad.
Well,
it's so bad.
Here's the problem with social media. This is the problem with social media. You know how they say never meet your heroes? Social media lets you meet all of your heroes, and then you're left with nothing. You're like,
it brings out the worst part of people. I was sharing some memes that I see people post. That's not people I'm friends with on Facebook. One of them was, "This is the true leader of the Democratic Party," and it was a picture of Satan. There's another one where it was, "If there was a civil war in America right now, would you fight for it?" And America is spelled wrong on the meme. It's just like,
but why?
Guys, we need to talk.
This is the thing that gets me, is that what do you know about your great grandfather on your father's side? If you follow that, what do you know about your great grandfather?
About his political, my great grandfather, I basically know nothing about.
Okay, right?
Yeah.
So imagine now that your great grandchildren will go back and see, in hindsight, through the lens of history, knowing what's right, what's wrong, everything else like that. They're gonna see the statements most people make on Facebook now are the statements that you make to your buddies in a bar, or to your friends, and or whatever.
The other aspect of it is that we're all thrown in together. We're thrown into the great social media melting pot, as it were, and everyone's comment becomes a reaction to somebody else's comment. So it's like, oh, I'm getting one up on the libs, or oh, I'm trolling these
repugs.
These whatever. So it's like your great grandfather, he probably didn't have such an established ideology, and was not even he probably didn't even think about his political identity in the way that we do today.
Because he didn't have to live it every single. It's like if you're going to a bar and people start talking about it, that's one thing. But now people live their political ideology every single minute, every single day when they're on social media, and then even if they only kind of haphazardly believed something this is kind of how I feel, and then somebody attacks for it, and then all of a sudden they're digging into notifications, and all of a sudden they have these super hard convicted beliefs about something they really didn't care about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're forming these, these.
And neither party has a clue what the hell.
No, exactly, 100%. And so our beliefs go through this, this calcification or ossification process where it's all of a sudden it's I'm locking down on these because I'm under attack.
And not to insult anyone's intelligence, but when you see people and like you're like, I know more or less your professional background, like where do you get all these like super strong beliefs about like, economics or foreign policy?
Right.
Like, is this like something you really have studied and you feel passionately about?
I know
If so, that's okay. That's great. But
that's the thing that gets me is how many people are experts on a topic, a foreign policy or a country, a bill, anything that they knew nothing about yesterday. You know, it's like, we must do this. It's like you had never even heard of this until, you know, your media channel of choice told you about it.
And your great-grandfather, your grandfather, and perhaps even your father, I mean, he, you know, was probably the guy, you know, with the big tongs taking the block of ice off the back of the wagon and bringing it into the guy. And I mean, probably came home and like cracked open a beer. Like, he didn't think about this shit.
Yeah.
Didn't give a fuck.
Yeah. Well, and I believe that, you know, most people, I believe most people don't think about this stuff. I think that, you know, there's a lot of people who on like social media, for instance on Facebook, who have a few friends, family, whatever, and they post pictures of dogs, and they go to work, and they come home, and they just want to put food on the table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times, that's where when one party goes into sort of zealot mode, you know, when you know, because like during the 80s it was really, and probably part of the 90s too, you know, it was really the religious right. You know, I mean, like they were kind of front and center.
Oh, the moral
majority. Right. And now we have, you know, this kind of social justice warrior ideology on the left, and they're the same thing. They're Puritans. You know, they're the same thing. People who would.
I think it's even worse with the leftists now. I mean, if you're a Christian evangelical, I mean, you can be, you know, having sex with prostitutes and blowing lines of coke, and there's like forgiveness for you.
Yeah.
But if you're on the left wing and you violate you don't pass a purity test for whatever it is you said or did, I mean,
100%.
You're fucking done.
100%. You know, 100%. Like, I agree. I think that like people who will take those hardline stances on anything and try to bend people to their will, they're the same people. Like it's personality. It's the same personality. It just happens to be what informed them as to whether they go left or right.
Or they just choose a side. They choose a tribe.
Right.
And they double down. And it's like, do you even care about this, or is this just like, you know, a hobby horse for you?
Well, I think one of the, you know, like when I used to talk with people who were so and so communists, it's like, oh, you know, for government, you know, means of production, blah blah blah. I'm like, look, dude, like, or so, you know, people who think, oh, the taxes need to be higher, the poor need more money. I'm like, look, you make $60,000 a year. I guarantee you can live on 30. Make your stand. Like, give $30,000 of your money every year to people, to charity, like to something. Like that. Make your stand. Like live that example. No, the government needs to do it. It's like, all right, man.
Well, I mean, me personally, I'd much rather, I prefer to talk to, and I have more respect for the people who are actually like hardcore communists. Like, you go and talk to them and have a real conversation about economics and politics, like they're well read. Same thing with anarchists, like people who are hardcore anarchists.
Right.
You can talk to them about it and have this sort of conversation. Like I've talked to like one of the guys who is the founder, one of the founders of the Occupy Wall Street movement.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting conversation with the guy about economics, and he's pretty well read on it. You know, he's not like one of these people like you describe, like social justice or the champagne socialists in their high rise on the Upper East Side, who is sort of like this superficial veneer of virtue signaling politics. You know, it's like the low hanging fruit politics of the day.
Well, they're like the politicians talking about family values and homosexuality and this and that, you know, in the 80s. Meanwhile, they're in, you know, truck stop bathrooms, putting their feet out.
The secret tab.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same thing, you know.
Well, which brings us to, and I know you have trepidation about it, is the Greta Meltdown.
Okay, so I'm not following this. So you're gonna have to tell me because I know I should be more current, but I try to.
You need to be on social media every moment of the day, getting the notifications. The Trump tweets, they're coming hot and heavy, bro.
I've heard.
They're coming hot and heavy.
But you know what? I'm actually happy.
I'm happier I participated.
I am happy.
So Greta, she's like 13.
Okay.
Climate activist.
Okay.
Climate activist. She took a yacht from Europe to America to be carbon neutral as she came here.
Wait, like a legitimate yacht,
Sailing
like a sailing boat or a yacht?
Not like a like a Elon Musk like super yacht that billionaires have. Not that, but like a sailing ship.
Okay.
Took that here so she could address the UN General Assembly, have some sort of press conference at the UN.
Wait, so she obviously then this was all planned because she didn't just take a sailing boat over here, struggle up upon the shore and like crawl up to the UN and go, I need to speak. Like so.
Correct.
So it was pre-planned.
Correct. No, she was not like an Irish immigrant coming ashore in Manhattan in the 1920s.
Right.
There was branding around it, these other climate summits, where Prince Harry flies in his Gulfstream, G5, that kind of deal. And she comes in and gives us this like speech, and I mean, you really have to go and watch it to really understand. Like it's this like bizarre tirade that she goes on, ranting and raving about unmitigated economic growth. You stole my childhood. I shouldn't be here. How dare you? All this kind of rhetoric from a kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay. I mean, you're passionate about this subject. I get it. But the speech she gave was fucking ridiculous, frankly.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculous. And
I mean, I kind of get on board because sort of like The Last Jedi, I feel like that stole my childhood. So I mean, I feel where she's coming from. I feel where she's coming from.
I mean, that's what I think. I'm like, man, like, can't this girl like go read some Captain America comics or something?
Yeah.
I know that sounds like flippant and dismissive, but I mean, the speech was, of the genre of young people have feelies. Listen to me, and I made some comments to this effect on Twitter. The Twitter. Made some comments like, this is hilarious. I was like, and I made this tweet and I said, wasn't it great back in the old days when we had convincing child actors like the Kuwaiti embassy, the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, who went up and told us that the Iraqis were taking Kuwaiti babies out of the incubators. And it turned out she was the daughter of the ambassador who had received acting coaching.
Yeah.
To give this speech to Americans to try to convince us to go into the Gulf War.
Right.
So I made this kind of comparison. Did not go over well.
No.
Did not go. I didn't know this when I tweeted this. Apparently, Greta has Asperger's syndrome.
Okay.
Which is it's a type of autism. It's not like full blown but it is a disability.
Okay.
She describes it as a gift herself, but it's a form of autism. I didn't even know this. That may account for some of her mannerisms.
Okay.
In the speech.
That's fair.
But I said, the fact that the speech was just asinine and ridiculous stands.
Right.
And all these people coming, Jack Murphy, you're attacking a child. This isn't normal, Jack. You mandango, how dare you? It's like bizarre. I was like, she's a public figure giving a public speech at a public venue on a global, world-encompassing socioeconomic issue.
Wait, how old is she? Is she like
She's
12 or
13 or 14, something like this. How are you going to tell me that you can't criticize a kid? And at the end of the day, I mean, really what it's about, the reason why you're not allowed to criticize her isn't because she's a kid. You're not allowed to criticize her because the people saying that agree with the political content of her speech.
100%. Because, I mean, who was, there was a girl on social media, and I don't even know what channel she was on, or what platform, but I remember she was doing these, like impersonations of AOC.
I I didn't see this.
And she was a young girl. I mean, I don't even know if she was 13. Like, I'm not sure how old she was. But she was doing these impersonations of AOC, which were, kind of funny.
Yeah.
And she got ran off social media. Like, she got hounded.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not about being a child.
It's about politics.
It's not about being a woman. The whole women supporting women thing. I mean, I remember all the stuff that people said about Sarah Palin. The things they say about Melania Trump. Like, let's be honest. It's not about women
politics.
supporting women. It's about politics. It's about who you can criticize and who you can't.
And to try to throw a kid up there and use that as your shield and say you cannot critique this political speech because it's a kid.
Right.
And to my friends on the far left who would say these sorts of things, I'd say, what do you think about the Hitler Youth?
Right.
And what are you going to say when the far right, when some white nationalist group takes a kid and puts them in front of you as a spokesperson?
Right.
You can't criticize their bullshit political speech.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to.
If some 13-year-old Aryan kid gets up there and starts talking about the sanctity of purity,
Doing the Hitler Youth.
right. I mean,
it's like, take a hike, kid. We're done with you.
And that's the idea.
And that's what they should have said to Greta too.
Well, and the idea is that, it's interesting that, obviously, sort of in the rules of logic, which I'm not an expert on or anything like that, but when you're attacking an argument, you don't make ad hominem attacks, right? You don't attack the person, you attack the argument, you attack their reasoning and things like that. But it seems as if there's this sleight of hand that goes on now.
Oh yeah.
That
big time.
Even when you attack the argument, it's like they're playing the shell game. It's like, okay, where's the argument? Where's the argument? You go, there's the argument. They go like, nope, that's the person. You're attacking the person. It's like, no, I'm attacking the argument. No, you're attacking the person.
Yeah, it's moving the goalposts, and there's also all these idiots out there who learned some Latin phrases for logical fallacies, and they just kind of throw them out at a whim without even knowing what they mean.
Why did I say? Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong, but I think there are all these people out there who are like, oh, you're reducing the argument to the point of absurdity. It's like, no, we're talking about
absurdity. Yeah,
here.
Exactly. Yeah,
calm down.
Yeah, it's like. That's the funny thing, is that there is the reducing it to absurdity or whatever. But sometimes you're also just following the next logical step and you go, oh, that's reducing it.
It turns into you cannot criticize the political speech because like you said, they're moving the cups around.
Right.
It's a moving target.
Right.
And that's my other issue with Greta's speech is that people say, oh, well, you're a science denier. You're denying science. Like, no, I'm not denying science. I'm critiquing her speech, and her speech didn't include anything about science.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, she made some comment about how we need to reduce the world's greenhouse emissions by the West's. That's an interesting point. It's always America.
The West.
And the West.
Right.
Even though
we're not
India and China are the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases.
Right.
And that brings me to my other point. Not only was her speech political rather than scientific, it was ideological in nature. And when you see these people that they're not addressing the global phenomena of climate change as a global phenomena, but rather they're focusing on shaming us.
Right.
And they're looking at working class Americans and saying, you, Dave, you're a disgrace because you drive a car to work, or you're a piece of shit because you eat meat.
Right.
You need to stop doing that to reduce.
Man, if that's why they think I'm a disgrace, they need to look into my history a little bit deeper because I can beat that. I'm
guilty as charged.
Yeah.
But that gives it away that it's this sort of self-loathing ideology. As I was saying, the champagne socialists who are trying to make themselves feel good about themselves. It's this veneer.
Well, and the thing that gets me, language always fascinates me and how people use language. And, when you have the People's Crusade, when you have, usually when you're looking at something, whatever it says it is, it's not. so the Affordable Health Care Act, it's not
The
affordable.
People's Republic of China.
The People's Republic
is
of China.
neither a republic nor for the people.
Nor for the people, right? Exactly. So the liberation, any liberation front, it's like, so language is always interesting and how people manipulate it. And this isn't just on the left or the right. This is just how people sort of like. And I remember, in the 70s, it was acid rain. In the 70s, all the movies and all the stuff, at some point, boiling drops of acid were, because the clouds were becoming so oversaturated with all this petrochemicals and stuff like that we were going to have acid rain. And that was the big thing. And
there was the hole in the ozone layer.
The hole in the ozone.
Because women use hairspray.
Right. The hole in the ozone, so we don't have aerosols anymore. And then global cooling. Then the next thing was global cooling.
In the 70s, it was like we're moving into another ice age.
Yeah, the ice age, and then there were movies for that. Then it was global warming. More recently, it was global warming.
And then they had to change it to climate change to cover their ass.
Now it's climate change because they really don't, they can't really nail down what's going on, or whatever it is.
It might be cooling, like right now, the ice is expanding in Antarctica, but it's retracting in the Arctic.
Right.
So you have heating and cooling.
Right. Right.
They're both happening.
So it's sort of like saying, look, I'm not sure right now if I'm sad or if I'm angry or if I'm happy. I don't know, but I do know that it's your fault, Jack, and you need to do something about it. I want you to change what you're doing because something's going on.
I need to, they point out both on an individual level, we need to stop living our lives, and on a national level, they talk about reducing us to 0% GDP growth. And do a little bit of research on what 0% GDP growth is. That is tantamount to genocide.
Yeah.
And that is the only way you get there.
Yeah.
Only way you get there. And when you say 0% GDP growth, what you're telling is the entirety of the developing world, West Africa, fuck you. You guys have to live in poverty forever.
Right.
You can never have any development. You can never better your lives. You can never do better for your children. Just live in the mud, die of malaria, and shut up because you're heating up planet Earth.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Wait, we're not heating up, doing something. We're not sure what.
Yeah, you're doing something
because it's not global warming anymore. It's climate change.
Look, I don't deny science, but when you start talking about policy,
right
now you're getting into politics. And to claim that that's science, and they're yell in my face, science, there's spittle going in my eye.
Right.
Yelling and screaming at people like that is also not science.
Right.
That is just crazy, irrational emoting.
Right.
People do that because it's giving them some sort of personal catharsis. You're not convincing anybody of anything.
Right. Well, I think the first time that I really sort of, whatever it was about climate change, I can't remember if it was during the cooling period or the warming period that I kind of sat up and took notice, and not enough to notice to really do any amount of research whatsoever, but just the type of notice that goes, okay, well, this is another media cycle, was when scientists, legitimate scientists, started getting fired from and blacklisted from government organizations for putting forth contrary research or disputing the data or the data collection methods. And anytime, in any environment, when I see people that are getting silenced, people getting silenced that that kind of should know what they're talking about. It's one thing to, if they're coming up with a different data set, then why aren't you attacking the argument? Why aren't you attacking the facts? That's what I want to see, is I want to see the opposing side's data and have them explain their data to me and then put them together and tell us, why, because they're experts in their field, tell us why we should why their data actually matters.
For me, what did it was that they kept predicting the end of the world.
Right.
Like the alarmism of it, that they keep telling us, if we don't do something right now,
Right.
it's the end of the world.
It became a death cult. It became
I have been on this.
doomsday.
I've been on this world for 36 years,
Yeah.
which granted is a fart in the geographical or geological time scale of the Earth. 36 years is nothing. Doesn't matter. But as far as human activity and human sociology, I have seen people claiming over and over and over again, the end is coming, the end is coming, the end is coming. My entire life I've been told that the sky is falling.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen.
Right.
And when it doesn't happen, you don't get to make that claim a second time and think that it has credibility.
But here's the thing: is that we do it like the right was doing it during Obama. Like the end is nigh. The end
like
is
Glenn
nigh.
Beck saying that Chairman Mao is coming back.
And now the left is doing it with Trump. The end is nigh. The end is
always. It's always right. America is always in decline. There are those people out there who are always saying like we're gonna have a civil war. This is
everybody's walking around right now, and I think it was it was similar during Obama, but not to this degree, not even close to this degree. But people are walking around right now with like Trump constantly in there, like their life has not changed. Like if they shut down social media and didn't pay attention to what Trump was saying, the actual daily activity of their life has not changed from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever. And yet they're living in this perpetual like the
crisis.
Sky is falling crisis state. This is just. These are the worst times of my life. It's like, well, then get off social media. It's not.
How weird is that to we live in a golden age by basically every metric.
By every metric, this is one of the best times. Like people are like racism is worse than it's ever been. It's like,
no,
what? Well, are you seriously that narcissistic?
Yeah.
Not.
Are you that self-loathing?
Yeah. Okay. Not even taking the world history, and I think Americans are amazingly sort of like myopic, in the terms of like America. Like
we don't understand our own history.
Yeah, and we don't understand our own. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is it like to say that now in America is the worst time ever? Is like one, we've had much worse times in America. Two, there are much worse things going on in the world right this minute.
I mean, people talk about all this crazy stuff that this is going to bring down America. I've heard people on the right make it sound like the media is about to destroy America. Like, you think some op-ed in the New York Times is about to destroy America? We survived a civil war, 2 global wars, and a Great Depression. Yeah. But this is it. Yeah. And what does it say about us that we're so, like you said, narcissistic? Yeah. We're so self-involved. Yeah. That we're walking around, the Civil War is coming, man. America's about to collapse. Like, what? And look, I think America as an empire, as a nation, I think it'll eventually end. I think that we will screw ourselves, and it's not going to be the left or the right. It's going. Global order is going to change. What is going to be is the left and the right lining up behind their politicians instead of holding their politicians accountable. It should be the people versus the politicians. Like, you're our representative, you need to do it. But we treat our politicians now as like sort of demigods, and so we don't, we'll hold the other side's politicians accountable, but not ours. Yeah, we elect these people thinking they're like the second coming of Christ. So I think that America as a country will, maybe in 500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, empires rise and fall, through their own, sloth and greed and inefficiency and everything else like that. But it's also like our system is very resilient. Yeah. The founding fathers did a phenomenal job of setting up a system that, will drift one way and then drift another way and can right itself. I think the issues run with things like the Patriot Act and things when the government grabs power that it didn't previously have and then holds on to it. And both the left and the right in politics do that. I'll tell you, reading Henry Kissinger's book Diplomacy, I'm about 200 pages into it. It's a hefty book, so I got a ways to go. But reading about the run up to World War I, there's quite a few parallels to the political situation we find ourselves in today, as far as the hubris, the self-indulgence, the pettiness.
Yeah.
And also the rise of public opinion. That was kind of the first time where public opinion became something that politicians made decisions based on, that you had to appease the public. You had a press that was also manipulated by industrialists. And the press in like not Weimar Germany, but Prussia, Bismarck's, what we call today Germany, was incredibly jingoistic, and they were actually had a role in pushing the government towards war. So it's all very interesting to reflect back on that and the leadership of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that our media, I honestly feel as though, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like government. I'm not like this strict libertarian. Like I feel like the government definitely has roles in certain things. Like the government certainly has roles in, in creating a fair arena, as it were.
Right, like a criminal justice system. And law enforcement.
Yeah, and also in certain aspects of business. Now, I'm not an economist, and so I can't. Like, there are a lot of things that I just don't know, so I try not to take strong stances on, so I don't show my ass. You know what I mean? But I would love to see the government make news companies basically basically say we are entertainment or we are news, and based on what they say, there will be certain guidelines for their behavior, and if they are news, then there has to be certain there's an accountability for inaccurate or intentionally, misleading or inaccurate, articles, reports, newscasts.
I mean, that's kind of gets into being a slippery slope. So I mean,
I 100% understand that. And
can you write political opinion then? I mean, where do the lines exist?
But see, I think, but 100%. But I think political opinion, 100%. You can write a political opinion because you're saying it's opinion.
Right.
I think the problem now is that almost all of our news, almost all of it, is political opinion that is pushed as news.
I was talking about information literacy earlier on, and I mean, there are a lot of people who will read the opinion section of, say, the New York Times, and they don't distinguish the difference between an op-ed and actual, like, normal journalism, a normal article that's written. Like, they just can't tell the difference.
But see, journalists can't be held responsible for, like, a reader's, like...
But I can tell you we do. From my own experience.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is, like, when it comes to that, I'm not saying that, like, this isn't, oh, you know what, some dude ironed his shirt while he was wearing it, so hey, General Electric, you need to put tags on your irons. Do not iron. Like I don't think that companies should be blamed for the inability of their customers to.
The press in America, it rarely, believe it or not, rarely do they outright lie to us. Usually, it comes to us under a different guise. That the information is decontextualized. That it's not fleshed out, that it's not really shown fully in the context.
Right.
Or there's pieces of the puzzle that are missing.
Right.
Like, usually they don't just outright lie to us.
No.
Sometimes they do.
But there has to be a standard, because if I say right now that 99% of all people who die of cancer eat oranges, I'm making a factual statement.
Right. I mean, it's a causation issue. Yeah.
Right. I'm making a factual statement. If I said last night 3 firefighters were seen running from a burning building, what is wrong with New York City firefighters?
Right,
Details of 10. It's like, running, with like kittens in their arms. You know what I mean? Like, but that's how news is reported, based on whether you're on the left or the right, and the image that you want to paint for your audience.
I think the danger with that, I mean, I agree that if you call yourself a newspaper, if you call yourself a journalist, the standards have to be a little higher.
Yeah.
You're not just some random activists, let's say, on Twitter.
Right.
That you just say wild bullshit every day. I mean, the standard has to be, the professional standards have to be higher.
Right.
But the danger in the sort of regulation, of course, is that you get somebody like President Trump who would love to jump in there and start telling the newspapers what they can report.
Right. Well, I get that. And I mean, the press would definitely need, and again, I don't know how that would happen in terms of like making that a type of, making news more accountable without also exposing them and subjecting them to political pressure or whatever else, because like I said, I don't know. And I don't care enough to actually find out. Like with a lot of the things that I don't have opinions on a lot of things, because I try not to form opinions on things that I don't know, and I just don't care deeply enough to really get down into the facts, because once I get down deeply enough to know the facts, and I know the facts, and then I have an opinion, what difference does it make?
Well, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but like there's one incident I mentioned to you where there was an article in the New York Times about a Afghan operation that took place, where what they reported it as a criminal activity.
Oh.
But the way things shook out, and I have heard the story from actually several different people at this point, how it actually shook out was quite a bit different.
Yeah. See, it's funny because when we talked about that, I didn't even know that it had been reported in the American media.
Yeah.
So this is probably the fourth or fifth event that I have direct knowledge of happening, or how it went down or whatever, that the media has misreported and reported in such a way of like, this is what we think happened, these are the facts we have, and this is what we think may have happened, as opposed to this is what happened with no sort of
well, it was decontextualized.
Okay.
In the sense they report what happened, but it didn't tell the other side of the story that those guys were going to rescue their boy.
Right.
They didn't just decide let's go beat the shit out of
well, we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, if you want. I'm going to look up that article, see if I can find it.
Okay.
You want to tell the real story about?
No, I think we should lead with the article. I think we should lead.
I don't know. I'm not even logged. I'm not even subscribed to the New York Times.
Oh well, then how about just to the best of your ability?
I'm just trying to find the article so I can share it and people can go look at it. If they
want. I'll give you another good example. So I spent some time in Guantanamo Bay, right, and at Camp X-Ray when it was.
Here it is. CIA's Afghan forces leave a trail of abuse and anger. I'm pretty sure this was it. And actually, I can read this article. Go ahead, say, and I'll find it.
So I spent some time at Camp X-Ray in Guantanamo Bay, like in early 2002, for a few months. And when I say I spent time there, I meant I was free to come and go. I wasn't in Camp X-Ray, but interviewing individuals there, and the camp was a hasty setup initially because they weren't really expecting to get this influx of detainees, of prisoners, and the walkway or the where people were walking on the from like the holding pens to the interview boxes, interrogation boxes, was kind of this crushed gravel, just it put down really quickly to form like a basic path that you could walk on. And And a lot of the detainees, a lot of the prisoners were cuffed hands and feet, and so they would shuffle along on this crushed gravel, and it was hard. It was difficult for them, and it would take a while to get them from where they were being detained to their interrogation boxes for their interviews or whatnot. So the commandant of that base kind of explored a number of options of how can we move these guys quicker, more efficiently, make it easier on them, make it easier on us. So like he tried golf carts for a while, and the golf carts would like sink into the gravel and whatnot. And the thing about Camp X-Ray is there are always reporters out front, and they'd always have cameras. So anytime you went in, you holding stuff up to your face and stuff like that, just because you didn't know who they were, or where the stuff was going, or anything else like that. But at one point in time, I remember that the commandant had tried to move these guys on dollies, just basic moving dollies, where they would lean up against it and then
like Joker and Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it was doing this to try to move them quicker and make it easier on them. And then I remember that it was being reported that these detainees were being beaten so badly that they couldn't even walk, and they had to be carried on like moving dollies. And it's that sort of thing. It's like, what? Really? That's, you saw, through the gates and, the kind of the fences, you saw somebody being on a dolly, and that was the assumption that you made.
So here it is in the article, I found it. The article goes on describing some pretty heinous crimes allegedly committed by paramilitary forces in Afghanistan. But then we get down to this one. Former President Hamid Karzai spent years trying to rein in American forces from carrying out night raids that angered villages and set them against his government, only to realize that the CIA's Afghan forces were doing the same. One episode in particular made Mr. Karzai furious. In 2009, the strike force in Kandahar tried to forcibly release one of its colleagues detained by the police on criminal charges. When the most senior law enforcement official in the province, General Matullah Kata, resisted, he and several of his officers were shot dead, former and current Afghan officials said. The CIA reluctantly surrendered the guards involved in the killing of the general after the Afghan leadership threatened to use force.
Yeah, that's not how any of that. That's not. The prisoner in question was illegally detained. It was a complete grudge, like holding. The police were way out of line.
It was like some family beef between.
I can't. It may have been a family beef. It was also. As I remember, there was like a lot of professional jealousy going on.
It's like
because I think that
whose turf?
Yeah. Well, not only that, but Kandahar was controlled. There was a lot of Taliban influence in Kandahar, and yeah. So one, I don't remember anybody. I don't know. So read that again.
Yeah. One episode in particular made Mr. Karzai furious. In 2009, the strike force in
okay, first off, you know why I made Karzai furious?
Because it was his boys?
Well, because the governor of Kandahar was like his brother or cousin or something like that. Like that, like that's why it made him furious. But anyway, and yeah.
The strike force in Kandahar tried to forcibly release one of its colleagues detained by the police on criminal charges. When the most senior law enforcement officer in the province, General Matullah Kata, resisted, he and several of his officers were shot dead, former and current Afghan officials say. The CIA reluctantly surrendered the guards involved in the killing of the general after the Afghan leadership threatened to use force.
I don't remember there being any casualties in that encounter. I could be wrong. I was around Kandahar at the time, and everybody knew what had gone down. But the thing is that the soldier who had been picked up, like, it was common knowledge that the police there had just basically pulled him out of his car and beaten the crap out of him, because there had been this escalating sort of just rivalry between the two, because that strike force was actually going out and pushing the Taliban back, and the police there were very much in the pocket of the Taliban. So the circumstances were, what I had heard is those guys just kind of, without like the Americans' knowledge, those guys just kind of suited up and decided they were going to go get their boy, and bring the good news.
I mean, stuff like that happened in Iraq as well. I mean, it's sort of like, it's weird for us to think about as Americans, but like, picture like, state highway patrol pulling a NYPD cop out of his car and beating the ever-living shit out of him.
Yeah.
Not because of some person, like, not because they don't like the guy, but because like their agency is pitted against that agency.
Yeah.
And, there's like,
yeah,
who gets to be
so they said, like, they didn't even mention what the criminal charges against the guy they arrested were, right?
No.
Because there were no criminal charges. It was a strong arm tactic that was, it was just a strong arm that where the police force bit off way more than they could chew.
And it says here, Mr. Eikenberry, the former general and ambassador, said the CIA-sponsored forces, which operated outside the framework that governed those under sovereign control of the Afghan government, raised concerns from the beginning.
Whatever. So did the Rangers there, right? So did what I mean is, forces that operate under any sort of clandestine or covert or, whatever, are always going to raise concerns for those do-gooders out there who think that you can sit down and kumbaya with everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I saw the similar dynamics in Iraq where the force that is particularly effective at hollowing out criminal networks tends to piss off the politicians because they're in bed with the bad guys.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, you knew that when you sent guys to like Abu Ghraib or whatever else, that they were gonna, most of them were gonna, they'd be back out there, a month later or, whatever. They weren't gonna stay long. And that's one of the real challenges is when you have a police force that isn't getting paid, and the Taliban or whoever it is, Sadr's folks, comes and says, hey, we'll pay you, we'll take care of you. Where do you think they're loyal to? They're not loyal to some, abstract notion of a nation called Afghanistan. It's going to be monetary loyalties or tribal loyalties or family loyalties. Yeah.
Primary loyalties.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to wrap it up here in a few minutes. This one's going to be kept a little short. So if you have any questions you want to get in real quick, like maybe we'll go another 5 minutes. I just want to take 1 second to remind you guys or make you aware that we have a Patreon page set up. I just posted a link in the comments if you want to check it out. And I'm going to start, I already started uploading some exclusive video interviews that I've done with some of the OGs, with old school Special Forces veterans, talking about some pretty gnarly stuff that no one's seen these interviews ever except for me. I think I'm the only one who's ever viewed them.
Yeah.
Because I made them, I did the interviews, and I'll upload maybe one a week. The first one is already up there. It's with a retired Green Beret who was a member of Detachment A in Berlin.
Nice.
What was Detachment A?
They were a Army Special Forces unit in Berlin during the Cold War. And their primary job, they got tasked with a lot of things over the years. Their primary job was sabotage behind enemy lines in the event that Russia ever invaded. So they were to become essentially the stay-behind element. And so if the Russians invaded, they would be then behind enemy lines in place with a cover, and they would go and destroy railroad junctions, power stations. There's all sorts of different acts of sabotage they were prepared to commit to slow down the Russian advance. So it was an insane mission. I mean, it was a suicide mission, basically. But the unit got pulled into all sorts of other things. I told these guys before that I will do some streams where it's just about Special Forces history.
Yeah.
I'll do an entire one about Dead A. I want to do the first one I want to do about Army counterterrorism, the history of Army counterterrorism, starting with the Sun Tay raid in Vietnam, and then we'll push forward to like maybe 1981 or 82. So talk about how all that came about.
Are there many Sun Tay Raiders still around?
There can't be too many. I mean, there's only like 95 of them to begin with.
That's why I wonder. Yeah,
there's a couple out there for sure. So I'm posting those interviews on our Patreon. If you guys could go and check it out, and if you can support the stream in any way, we're about a quarter of the way to our goal. We're looking to get to like 800 a month to kind of sustain us in place.
Yeah.
Sustain us.
That'll be for like rent and operating costs on the stream. We're still coming out of pocket and everything to build up the studio, and I know that you see the background and it doesn't change from week to week, but we're making changes with our deck, for streaming capabilities. We're trying to get it. We've been working, and when I say we, I mean Jack. While I sit here and eat sandwiches, Jack works on trying to get the Skype calls in, because we have a number of guests who don't live in the New York area, but are more than happy to call in. We just need to find a way to integrate that and make that function.
We're just waiting to make sure that it looks professional and sounds professional, so we're not producing a crappy product that nobody really wants to watch. So that's why we've been doing a lot of in-studio interviews so far. Otherwise, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that little bell notification so you get notified. I saw someone complaining that they didn't get notified until we were an hour into the stream.
That's been common on a lot of streams. People have been saying that. Let's face it, YouTube is not. They are no longer interested in supporting the creators. Like, they're all about
going corporate.
Going corporate. But please do still hit that bell. Please do still subscribe. Like, we can use the support. And if you've got an extra buck, if you've got an extra $5, and you'd like to throw that our way, it's not going into our pockets. It truly is. If you like the content and you want to support the content, $1 a month. 99 cents? No,
it starts at $1. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of, what's the ad though? 39 cents? 29 cents a day. 29 cents a day can make all the difference. A cup of coffee. Sorry. Anyway,
a cup of coffee costs 39 cents. Where the fuck is this?
This is back when the ads were first running. You can help these people for 29 cents a day. A cup of coffee.
But seriously, if everyone who watches just chips in $1, we'll blast right through being able to pay rent very quickly.
Yeah.
And I know some people either can't afford it, or some people want to actually see what we do, and want to see that we're legit and we're not just screwing around. So, and I understand everyone's welcome, but if you're able to and you can chip in a gold piece in the bucket, I appreciate it.
Yeah, we really would. Like I said, we're having fun with this, and we've got plans to do more. It's going to be a growth process.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. Okay, so Beer at the SHOT Show, and please begin to cover the history of tactical units. A ton of info on some of these guys getting out there in the years. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What areas of the world could we reduce our military presence with minimal risk? It's a tough question, because the risks of reducing always seem much greater than just leaving them in place.
And that's the thing, because
then we're all over the freaking world.
Because it's sort of like I don't know if Schrodinger's cat is the right thing, because No, because we know what the effect of the forces being in place is.
Yeah.
What we don't know is if we pull those forces, what will the effects be? Like, and it's one of those things where we can theorize, and you can have the best foreign policy minds on this theorizing, but at the end of the day, you never know what is going on in the mind of the leader of a neighbor state or something else like that. Like, it all comes down to, a guy waking up on the wrong side of the bed one day. Unfortunately, a lot of times, foreign policy, it's a crapshoot.
And we always oscillate between these positions of like, oh, we should withdraw, we should, like we pull troops out of one country and then we need to send them right back to respond to something.
Right.
Where do we have troops that we could withdraw? I mean, some places.
I feel like Japan. I feel like if we pulled forces from Japan, that there probably would not be. Maybe Germany.
I mean, Italy. Like, those are all countries that don't have like clear and present threats.
Right.
But the thing is, they're staging grounds.
Right.
So like Italy gets us into all of North Africa.
Right. Right.
Germany.
Well, except for Libya, apparently.
Well, we did get there, like 6 hours later. Germany gets us into Afghanistan.
Right.
Japan gets us into the Pacific Rim.
Right. And that's something to look at too. Is it? See, that's the thing. Is like, so going into Afghanistan, the common flight was into Germany and then over to Kabul or whatever, and so the question is if we pull back troops, are we pulling back just ground forces but maintaining support structures? Like, we have naval bases in Japan, but we also have, I think, a Marine Corps base or two there. Like,
in Okinawa,
so,
I believe.
yeah, so it's sort of like, okay, so do we eliminate the ground troops, the ability to project like immediate
And that, it would make China quite happy if we I actually think it's a big part of their soft power strategy is to cause so much friction between us and South Korea, the Philippines, and Japan that they just get us out of there entirely.
Yeah.
I think that's part of their long-term strategy.
Well, we pulled out of the Philippines. What has been the long-term effect?
We did close down Subic Bay. I mean, we had a bunch of.
I think the Air Force Base also, right?
But we still have such. We still have a footprint there. We still have a skeleton. I mean, there are SF team houses in places I've been asked not to talk about.
Right.
But I mean, my point is that we still have troops there, right?
Right.
And if we needed to escalate our presence, not in the Philippines, I don't think we're going to go to war with the Philippines, but if we needed to escalate the influx of troops in the Philippines so that we could then get them into South Korea, I think we could do that pretty quickly.
Right.
So yeah, it's a tough question.
It is.
It's the costs of empire.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's an easy target for anybody who wants to talk about American imperialism and things like that. Oh, we're occupying X number of countries all over the world, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I guess occupation I think is.
Well, I mean, when you have a SOFA agreement with the government, you're not colonizing Germany.
Right. Yeah, occupation.
Some of these countries desperately want us there.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I get a kick out of how Jack looks down at the live chat in disapproval every so often, as if in search for an intelligent comment, only to be disappointed every time. No, it's not that bad. Come on. Someone asking, did I enjoy Ranger Battalion or the Green Berets more? I had a good time in both of those units for different reasons. Recently did a presentation on my book on, was it Monday? I went down to Washington, D.C. at the Army and Navy Club, and it was awesome. There's 45, 50 people showed up, lots of engagement, questions, had drinks beforehand and dinner afterwards. I mean, it was awesome. Those guys were great. So thank you, Don and Dan, who hooked all of that up. Yeah, it was super. Budget issues and then your future may force us. No BS. quote-unquote news rep is still charging me $4.99, yet when I go to account settings, the only option is to upgrade. Hey brother, I wish I could say I just work here, man, but I actually don't work there anymore, so I can't speak to that one.
Yeah, you'll probably have. I mean, I don't know anything about news rep and how it goes, but when I've had that problem with like other subscription service, whatever, you dispute it with the pay service. Whoever, whether it's PayPal or your credit card or whatever, just send them something saying, hey, I'm trying, I don't want this, and they'll shut it down.
He says he'd rather give that $4.99 to the team house. Hey.
Now,
I'm not. What's the term they use with the religious folks? You're not supposed to proselytize.
Proselytization.
Or we can say solicitation.
Yeah.
I'm not soliciting.
Yeah.
But I am.
Oh yeah. why don't you like pull up that sleeve there and show the fine people at home a little bit of what they'll be getting for their $4.99.
This here tattoo?
No.
That sleeve?
No. It was a bad joke.
It was a figure of speech?
Yeah.
If I remember right, there was a politician who thought if more Marines went to Guam, the island would capsize. Yeah, that was like some senator said that. To what degree is mission...
I was in Guam for an 8.2 or 8.4 earthquake. So
really?
there may be some truth to that. Anyway, go ahead.
But it didn't capsize.
No, it almost split in half then.
To what degree is mission creep an issue in our force structure, branches duplicating assets? The Army had a sea lift capability. Do Red Horse and Seabees have redundancies? That's a conventional Army question. I mean, it's a good question, but I can't speak to it. I'd say in special operations, I see a lot of duplication of capabilities.
Yeah, I think mission creep. I mean, there's a benefit to having the redundancy, and also, the different branches of service play politics with each other, obviously, and
compete for funding.
Yeah, and so like the Army might not want to be reliant, or like the Marines may not want to be reliant on Navy, even though they're not technically different branch service. But one branch may not want to be reliant on another branch to, to support them or to get things done. Because now you're talking about getting approval, mission approval, or approvals through two different chains of command as opposed to just one.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like, if they're not working together, we need to fix that glitch rather than
I agree.
Try to.
I agree. I agree that I'm just saying that these are why.
Yeah.
These are the reasons why a lot of times there is that duplicate. Yeah, and in the soft community, and especially ops community, there's a ton of mission creep, and part of that is because everybody's trying to justify their funding. So
how come every single unit has a separate recce, low-vis, intel cell?
Right.
What?
Right. Well, but that's also...
It's also because the units they don't trust each other. Like, Rangers want to have Rangers doing their recon.
Yeah.
JSOC is going to want JSOC guys doing their recon.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. Like, SEALs want SEALs doing their recon. There is an element of that too.
I mean, for a while, RRD was actually fulfilling part of that strategic element, but then,
For a while,
but then they actually,
But their reason for existence up until 2001 was do reconnaissance on airfields for their 75th airfield season.
Well, actually, yeah, because that's kind of where they started out, and then they were just so, I think, good and so effective at their job that they became more of a strategic level asset than just a tactical level asset.
They did have a few little gigs in Bosnia, like they would get deployed in onesies and twosies. Yeah.
That's a really good group of.
There's a couple of things they did in Bosnia. I think mostly because the Delta guys kind of were taking them under their wing. Yeah. It was the only game in town.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, those guys are really good, and they've gotten sucked up into some other stuff. Do the redundancies have benefits? Then how come there's no Coast Guard in SOCOM? I don't know, man.
Well, but if you think of the Coast Guard's job, especially with the counter drug, there was a lot of counter drug in SOCOM. So So, I mean, there's that redundancy.
And there are like SF National Guard teams that get deployed with the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
I had one guy tell me that they loved being with the Coast Guard because they had the most lax ROE.
Yeah.
Like out on the high seas.
Oh, look.
Just smoke guys.
Before 9/11.
Well, I shouldn't say they smoked guys.
Before 9/11, the Coast Guard was killing more people than anybody. You know, they were engaging, and I don't mean killing more like they were engaging more bad guys. They were in more like the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard gets it on. People don't know that.
I've written about it a little bit in the past, and I actually have a book about this I haven't read yet. But there was a Coast Guard mission in the '90s in South America where they were doing riverine operations, like counter-drug operations. Yeah, really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Again, nobody really knows anything about it. So I think we need to kind of cut it there. Because I gotta run. I know you. I mean, Dave and I have both had a couple crazy days this week.
Yeah.
And it's gonna keep getting crazier.
Yeah.
Friday, Comic-Con. One more thing to throw on the.
So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Comic-Con in New York.
Friday, I will be there. I'm gonna be dressed up like Sailor Moon. So you can come and say hi. No, I'm not gonna be dressed as Sailor Moon. But there's some people got really excited right there when I said that.
If somebody wait, what's our Patreon right now?
Our Patreon?
Yeah, what's it at right now?
Oh, what is it at?
Yeah.
Let's see. Right now it is at $193 per month.
Jack, if we could get to $1,000 on our Patreon by Friday, would you commit to dressing as Sailor Moon?
I'll do it. I'm down.
Okay. If we can get to $1,000 by Friday on our Patreon, Jack Murphy, please spread this far and wide. Jack Murphy will cosplay, dress as Sailor Moon at New York Comic Con.
Look, I am confident in my sexuality, and I will prostitute myself for the cause at any moment. So I will sacrifice myself for the stream. I'm prepared. You know, a Japanese schoolgirl outfit with miniskirt would not be my first choice of attire, especially in October. But look, sometimes you gotta man up and do what you need to do.
Look, you're just another barrel-chested freedom fighter, like,
I remember
holding the line.
I remember back in the day. You remember Man-Fae? Man-Fae. So there was an anime called Cowboy Bebop. That was really cool. And there's a character named Faye. She's a woman, and she had one of those absolutely ridiculous anime girl outfits, like a yellow tube top thing, mini skirt with her cleavage falling out of it. And there's this dude back in the day, I guess this was in the 2000s, and he was like kind of like one of the first like cosplayers who would go out there dressed, and he dressed like Faye, and he called himself Man-Fae, and he had this big fat guy, and he had like all chest hair and stuff. He was on like Conan O'Brien one time, and I remember watching it, and he was like, "So what's your dad think about this?" And he's like, "Yeah, my dad's in the Navy. He's not really down with it."
That's funny.
Sailor Moon. I'll do it. This guy says, I will pay Dave $1,000 to not dress like Sailor Moon.
Sold.
All right, guys. Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. We'll do another stream probably next Thursday.
And we're gonna find a schedule. Like
I keep saying that.
I know it's tough because
we're both all over the place.
Yeah, and I mean, So
thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we will see you next week. And I will have next week also another video interview with the OGs that I'll upload onto our Patreon page. Dave, you need a signature phrase to sign out with. Love, love, love. Peace out.
Roger.
Oh, that was weak. All right.